Hello and welcome out to this episode of Outbreak Gamers. I love it, man. In the house tonight, we have the one and only Steel Rain. Steel, buddy, what's going on?
Man, what up, Dave? Look, man, you know what's you were telling me a little bit in the background,
Hmm.
that you were grateful just getting me on and everything. And
I
I
am.
wanted to flip that on its head a little bit because what's so dumbfounding to me is as I've stepped into the community is that the way that people reach out, even if you don't speak to these people on a day-to-day basis, you never know
Hmm.
who may reach out to you.
Hmm.
And you've been kind of up and coming. I've been looking and seeing because some of the little things that you've been doing. I can also be honest and say, hey, I'm not as in tune as I once was, working on my own content, personal things
Sure,
also.
sure.
But I just want to start off by saying it is such a beautiful and it's such an amazing thing. Just that welcome me on, that you even asked me to be here, man. And it's nothing but love and appreciation for that, for sure.
Well, I appreciate that greatly. I mean, like I said, I've caught your show a few times. I've already interviewed Pong Soul.
Yeah, I saw
He
that one.
was he was like number three on my interview list
Yep,
to get on here, and of course we talked about your show. Then of course we're going to get a little more into it today. But
100%.
it was you got a great personality. You got a really good format, and then you've been making these really nice guest appearances on Boom Show, which is fantastic. And I think you have a good opinion. You have a lot to say, and
Yeah.
and that's the reason I even started this to begin with, was that these people, when you see them on there and you hear their where they're coming from, kind of thing. It's like,
Right.
I always like to know a little bit more about you. Not like,
Yeah.
this isn't like what was it that Colt said, Maury Povich. I don't try and do that, but
Not a grilling session, huh?
no.
100%. Nothing
I
wrong
might
with
have to get him back on and then do that.
There you go.
I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
No, I'm
Exactly.
just
Got to
kidding.
grill
I'm
them.
just kidding.
Drill them.
Exactly. So, sir, how are you doing today, man? I mean, how is things going for you right now?
Man, other than the kids driving crazy. No, but within all serious, man, um, just got to be grateful, man, on a day-to-day basis. I'm glad that I was able to wake up this morning, put my best foot forward, and just continuously move, man. It's one of the major things, especially over the last couple of years with this pandemic and everything, that
Hmm.
has at least made me kind of look at things maybe not because I've always been a little bit different in thought process, but it definitely has made me consider where I'm currently at in my life. So
Hmm.
like a little bit, I'm currently moving my way into cybersecurity and everything, getting back into something that I was extremely passionate about with computers and everything. So that's been a lot of what I've been going on other than gaming, man. Kids, wife, gaming.
Yeah,
And working on some of my other passions. You can probably may be able to see right here. I
that's
do
cool. I
also
like
build
that.
Gundams. So I try to balance the hobbies.
Sure. I love it, man. I absolutely love it. So let's get this started. Kind of like how I like
Yeah.
to start most of my interviews. Just kind of, I guess, kind of like your work history. Like I
Okay.
guess like what was your first kind of job that you've had, and where are you at today?
Um, Man, you left it so open. I got
I do. I like to leave
make
it
sure
open.
make sure
Let
you
you think.
steer me in case I kind of veer off the edges. But to start off with, for me, I've been in customer service since I was about 8 years old. And what I
Hmm.
mean by that is my father owned his own business. So one of his main things that he always wanted me to understand and know, because as I've come to find out, it's actually an important piece to life. It's just how to understand people. And paying attention to people,
Hmm.
because there's so many little things that each individual person does that can be telltale signs in business or whatever the case may be. So customer service, he made sure to pound customer service in my head until since about the age of 8. But my first real actual job, kind of playing off that customer service, was actually at the movie theaters. Was at the Rave Motion Pictures, which is no
Nice.
longer the Rave now. It's AMC. So, and many people may not be familiar with the rave. I live in the South, I live in Florida, so the rave was a big thing, but before they turned to AMC and everything.
Hmm.
But the movie theater job, that was one of those things when I look back on it now, it's like, man, I actually really enjoyed doing it, man. And it wasn't necessarily, because I got the free movies and the popcorn. It's not really about that. It's just, there's something about being in that environment. You're talking with different people. You get to build off of other people's excitement when they come in. Like, I was working there when Iron Man 2 came out, I believe. Well, the Iron Man 1 and 2, when they both released, I was working there. So you get to see that excitement. Then I come up and I got my Iron Man helmet on, and now I'm behind the concession stand and handing out pop. And you see everybody's face and it's full of excitement. And there's no better moments than those. I feel like we've stepped away so far from a lot of that, whether it was like in gaming where you stood in line for that midnight release, or for movies, you stood in line for that midnight release. So, and now it has to be certain things that end up pulling that kind of attention. But that's kind of where I started at, and I've kind of been playing off of that throughout the years. Like I started with, since I'm getting back into cybersecurity, I've also been working on computers since I was about 8 years old too. My father was also very heavily, not only was he in real estate, construction, but he also was a computer head. So to kind of give you a little bit of perspective, I was born in 92. I've been messing with Windows since Windows 95. So since I was about 3 years old. And then so I've been on and off with PC, but it really picked up in about the early 2000s when we made that switch from over to DSL to, from dial up to DSL, and then no cable and so on and so forth. So that's been that. So I've been doing that off and on throughout the years, repairs, whatever people needed, really.
Sure.
But not really. I haven't really taken it too serious, because got to a certain point in my life after high school where it was just like I made the bold decision to go ahead and have kids, and before that I had gotten to my own little bit of troubles. You got to have those growth spurts. You're young, you're 18, 20, you're like, nothing can touch me. Who cares?
Bulletproof.
Yeah, exactly. And that caught up with me quick, man. And that forced me to really sit down and reevaluate some things. I had kids. And I've just been on the grind ever since, man, which is why I'm getting back into what I'm passionate about, computers. I've never left it. I've kind of been in and out of the scene in between. But currently I'm just getting ready to get back into school for cybersecurity. So that's where I'm at now.
Man. Well, that's awesome, man. School and education, I mean, that to further and better yourself is always the key, man. That is so important, man. So it is awesome that you're focused on that. That's great, man. That's good to hear.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, in this day and age, it's not necessarily always about the degree. It's more so like putting things in practice, especially in like with tech and everything. Nobody wants somebody that just has, all the education in the world, but you don't have actual practice in it. Right. And that could be a real difference too. So I have the practice. I just don't have the actual certificates and everything I need. That's what I'm working on. So,
well, hopefully it'll come to you pretty easy. Hopefully you'll be able to rock those out. Yeah. That's awesome. All right. Well, let's turn the conversation a little bit into obviously gaming. So what was your first experience with gaming, or either console or games or was it arcade? How did you get started into playing games?
When my earliest moments, when I really think back on it, it's probably going to be on the Game Gear, Sega Game Gear. It was a handheld console, so I guess we can start the whole handheld kind of conversation there. But I remember my father handed me this device that had Sonic on it. It took like four to six batteries, and I could only get like 2 to 3 hours of playtime out, if that, depending on what you had brightness on or whatever the case may be. I can't remember, but I was real young when I first got my hands on that. So that would probably be my first kind of iteration. I think that's also what started my infatuation with Sonic 2. With Sonic also, because after that I was a super Sonic kid. Like I played Mario at some point after that. After I got my hands on the Game Gear, because I had a Game Boy Color. I had a regular Game Boy that was passed down to me. Then I had a Game Boy Color. And I played Mario, but it just didn't click for me like it did for a lot of people. Like even today, and I've made this kind of joke or this reference or whatever, but literally Mario could go out of the window today or be completely non-existent, and Sonic should be the stand-in for him. Like the Sonic
Yeah.
is the better character overall, better world, better develop, everything. He's it. But so that's probably going to be really the start, and then from there, of course, you go in. I go into PlayStation, but it just depends on where you want to take the conversation from there. So I don't want to
Wherever you
rush.
want to. No, dude. We got plenty of time, and then there's lots of things to talk about. But I mean,
Absolutely.
for gaming, I mean, I guess so that's how you got started. I guess did you get I guess what other systems I guess kind of did you get into? Did influenced you? Well, was it what kind of gaming did you like? Was it sports gaming? Was it
Gotcha. Okay.
RPGs? That kind of
So
thing.
I like that. So we're getting it.
Oh yeah,
For me, coming off the handheld devices again, trying to think back on it a little bit. So,
sure.
going from the Game Gear and then going to the Game Boy, then the different iterations of the Game Boy. The
Oh
Game Boy
yeah.
Advance SP was the last one that I ended up really playing. But before that, I believe the SP came out at some point between right around the end of the PlayStation 2 generation. So I'll
Hmm.
step back a little bit. During that time, from what I can remember at least, we didn't personally have a Sega Genesis. I'd never owned any other of the other consoles. My first console that I can remember us having in the house was a PlayStation 1.
Nice.
But I did touch these other devices, throughout the years as I was growing up,
Sure.
whether it was with my cousins or whatever's the case. So I got that Super Nintendo vibe, and I got that Sega Genesis feel to really get my Sonic thing going on. And then it kind of moved. That's when in that time somewhere between moving from Sega Genesis into the PlayStation 2, I was also kind of diving in and out of the PC space because late 90s, early 2000s, educational games on PC were a big thing.
Yeah.
I was in elementary school, so of course my parents were wanting to make, hey, we got this new technology. You want to make sure that you can use it, that you're actually going to use it for something, not
Hmm.
just try to, kicking me off my phone or whichever the case, when you're accessing the internet. But I think that's where I wanted to take that. But somewhere in between there, the PC came in because I was ended up playing Sonic CD on PC, so
Hmm.
that kind of tailored my interest towards that side. But again, PlayStation had always been there. So like games like Rampage, or from one of the earliest games that I can remember, I ended up having a blister on my thumb for a long time, or a callus on my thumb for a long time
Yeah.
from playing Rampage, just tapping the mess out of those buttons, man.
Oh yeah. Great
Used to
game.
used to love that, and then between, and that's why a lot of that space is kind of foggy because we do go from PlayStation 1 into PlayStation 2 in the home. But when you evolve the PC side of it, because there's a multiple faceted picture here. So
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a multiple pictures here. So let me see if I can paint a little bit.
Okay.
So going into the PC market, that opened my eyes for what RTSs could be, real-time strategy games,
Hmm.
those top-downs, Age of Empire early on, the
Oh
StarCraft
yeah.
early on, Command and Conquer early on, Warcraft also, that was part of it, and there was many other RTSs that were kind of sprinkled throughout there. Um, MDK was another one of those. Talk about early, I believe BioWare got involved in MDK2, another classic
Hmm.
game from back in the day. That was on multiple consoles.
Oh yeah.
That I actually I played that on PC as well. So it was really up and down with that, and I was really heavily involved in the RTS market. Then I got into tower defense and everything, so it kind of carried on from there. But what really opened my eyes was when Rainbow Six came. When Rainbow Six came out, and again, all these kind of blend together. So
Yeah.
they all kind of release around each other within some years of each other.
Sure. Sure.
All early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. But when that first Rainbow Six came out, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, and I played it on PC, I think there was a certain thrill to it because I was honestly too young to play it. Right, it's a mature rated
Right.
game,
Right.
but I took full advantage of my father at the time. I believe he was doing truck driving, so he wasn't home like that.
Right.
And the only other person that would use his computer was my mom when she would do shopping or whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
or she would do emails, whatever, AOL, all the great things that existed at that time.
Yep. Yep.
But she did allow me to actually get on there and start gaming. I don't know if it was one of those things to where, oh, it's not so bad. And to be honest, when you look back at it, it wasn't really that bad. You
Right.
look at God of War and Gears of War and all these other games that is extremely bloody on purpose.
Yeah.
But all things in consideration, I think that really opened my eyes to what first-person shooters were kind of like. Because before that, the only other reference I could pull from was like GoldenEye, right?
Yeah.
And there were some other games that were on there too, but with GoldenEye being that closest reference that you can make there, it's like, man, I don't know if it can get much better from here. And then also the other thing that we were dealing with at that time, bringing those first-person shooter games to console wasn't a known thing. So
Right.
it's like, hey, keyboard and mouse, that's what you need to play these games. And you can only use that to play these games because that's how you're going to be good at them.
Mm-hmm.
And what really changed that perspective for me, along with how I kind of look at PC and everything, was when we got that first Xbox. But before we talk about the Xbox, I do feel like it is important to talk about the PlayStation 2, since we did talk about the PlayStation 1 a little bit. Going from PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2, the other thing that I really loved my PlayStation 1, and the biggest reason why I loved the PlayStation 2 was because of fighting games. The fighting game scene was a huge thing. I wasn't able to get into arcades like that. Again, we just weren't as fortunate. I didn't have the time or the transportation or whatever the case to get to those arcade bars or whichever the case, to have that type of access. But I did play at those. That's where I got my early experiences with Marvel vs. Capcom, SNK, and all those great titles, and also Tekken early on. But fighting games were my main caveat for a long time. So again, like I mentioned, Tekken Tag, all the Tekkens are so like they're. I hold such a close place to that because that to this day I think is what started that competitive bug in me. To even today, it's like I'm the guy that I'll play the story game on the hardest difficulty that's available to me, just because I feel like that's the better experience to me.
Right.
But I do blame a lot of that on the competitive side of that. But at the same time, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, just because during that time in the fighting game scene, it was, hey, you put up or shut up. You put your quarters down. If you're in an arcade, you put your quarters down. You either win or you don't. And if anything, you had to come in and get better whenever you could.
Right.
And then when it came more like this couch co-op thing, to where it was like you got buddies coming over talking smack to each other, you were always wanting to improve so that you weren't the guy that was getting all the smack talk to. Oh, you're garbage, you're trash, you need to get better, you need to get good at the game.
That's funny.
And it's funny when you think about it, because a lot of this was already happening before online gaming became a thing. So you can only imagine how that kind of carried on into my online gaming sphere. Now, me personally, I've never been the dude, like the gamer, to say, "Oh, I'm not the shit talker." I don't. If I'm allowed to talk, excuse me.
Yes, you say whatever you want.
I'm not the smack talker, man. So I don't talk smack until you talk smack to me, right? Let's keep things cordial. It's all about the game. I'm not going to tell you how bad you are. That's not creative. And gaming has. I've always looked at gaming as something that's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be enjoyable. Yeah, we can talk a little smack here and there, but overall, we're trying to see each other get better, and we have like a central focus.
Yeah.
But so PS2 made big fighting game thing for me, big fighting game consoles for me. Didn't really dabble too far out of there. Crash Bandicoot was involved in both PlayStation 1 and 2 a lot. Also, we can sprinkle in there, because before the OG Xbox came out, we also got the Dreamcast, we had the GameCube. Both consoles I did end up getting.
Nice.
Dreamcast was an amazing system. Crazy Taxi,
yeah.
Sonic Adventure, Sonic
Love them
Adventure
all.
2. It's still the greatest Sonic game that's ever been made. I hate when people say, "Oh, there hasn't been a good 3D Sonic game made," and it's like, okay,
I
so we're
agree
just
with
gonna
you.
ignore the Sonic Adventure series completely.
Exactly.
Some of the best story building, some of the best world, but it's just it was great for Sonic in 3D. And then the GameCube just kind of carried that forward, right? You got the
Yeah.
small disc, had this certain essence to it, but also throughout that entire time, before we get into that OG Xbox, I always had to be really picky and choosy about what games I was going to play
Mm.
because before. Like you were gonna maybe familiar. I mean, me personally, I was young during that time, so it's not like I just had money to go out and buy whatever
Right.
new hotness was out. I had one game. I played that one game. Until I got sick and tired of it.
Yeah.
The
Yep.
first game that I remember taking back to EB Games was Crash Bandicoot 2, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
because I beat it like 10 times over, and I was like, oh, I'm sick and tired of this game. My
Mm-hmm.
pops heard me talking about it, and he was like, oh, we could take it back and go get another game. And mind you, I probably had beat the game within like the first 2 weeks of it being out or whatever,
Right.
multiple times over. I was like, oh, we could take it back and get a new game. And I was like, oh, we could take games back. I was like, oh, so that also kind of started. I won't necessarily say it's a bad habit, but it also made me look at games kind of differently too, because it was like, oh, if I get this game, I can just trade it in later. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
get that, spend that, put that towards my next game that I'm gonna get. So
Yep.
I kind of started that kind of thought process in my head, and then also Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, whatever you want
Oh,
to
yeah.
call it, during that time was also a major thing. So renting movies was a real major thing. But that leads into kind of the Xbox, because as somebody who's kind of been involved in all the systems, especially in the PC space,
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't expect for it to be like, oh, there's this console that. And there's this first person shooter that's doing really well on console. And I remember me coming home one day, and my dad was sitting down playing, and he was playing this game. And he asked me to come sit down with him, and I was watching him for a little bit. And I was like, well, what game are you playing? I was like, what is this? He was like, it's Halo. I was like, Halo? What is that? He was like, oh, it's a first-person shooter. It's on console. This is the new console that came out. It's called the Xbox. It's made by Microsoft. And I was like, oh, Microsoft, dope. I've been working with Windows this entire time. That's amazing. So
Yeah.
I guess because of I'm not necessarily going to say it was a bias, but because I was so familiar with it at the time,
Mm-hmm.
other than like Fatback Max, but who had that at their home at the time.
Right.
Most people had Windows PCs, so I was like, it was familiar territory for me, and I never looked at gaming, at least from when I was growing up, to where, oh, this console is better than this console because these games. No, it was just playing games, and
Right.
I played what was available to me, and I played those games for thousands of hours at times. So when the Xbox came out, and he showed me Halo, and he ended up getting me to play with him, that really flipped a switch in my head, because that made me look at gaming completely different. Because Halo, and Pong makes fun of me for this, and other people throughout my life have done the same thing, because I'm an Iron Man fan, and with that, I do have a thing for people in suits, whether it's Iron Man, whether it's whoever, Guyver, whether it's Power Rangers,
Yeah.
Voltron, whatever it is. If you got a suit on, I'm ready. You got some powers, you got some mechs that are going to come out of nowhere. I'm excited.
That's cool.
But so there was already an appeal for me there with Master Chief. Hey, he's a super soldier. There's these aliens. You're shooting them with these different guns. Yeah, you got an AR, but you also have plasma pistols, plasma rifles. And you had so much variance, and also in like the level design and everything. It was just like something that I at the time hadn't really ever seen before, especially coming from something like Rainbow Six and all other RTS games. So it was like that fully enveloped me into only playing Halo for a long time.
Yeah.
Halo ended up really opening the door for me to step into the competitive scene.
Mm.
So I would start jumping into it got to a point where I was getting so good to the point to where my pops was like, "Hey, we're doing this LAN party. I want you to come on. I want you to come through so you can be on my
Nice.
team and everything
Yeah.
else." So we were, the LAN things was a super major thing, and I was
Love
already kind
those.
of used to that because, I mean, again, when you're playing RTSs and everything, you're in that open environment. Also, we're playing that competitively,
Hmm.
and not necessarily competitively, but with buddies and everything.
Right, right.
We get into a space, all hook up through LAN, and party up and play. So that just kind of carried over with Halo, man, and yeah, it's just to this day, Halo goes down as an IP that I can never look over. No
Hmm.
matter if Halo, no matter like let's just we'll use the current state of the day. No matter what state Halo Infinite is in, I can't say that it's a bad game because
Right.
it's
I
not.
agree with you.
No matter if it's lacking content, whichever the case may be, because since the first Halo, the other thing that I've realized over the years is that there is no other game like it. The closest thing is Call of Duty, and Call of Duty adapted its play style to
Mm.
play like Halo did. That
Right.
analog style, making it feel real natural for the player and everything. Except it's Call of Duty. It's a little bit different. So,
Yeah.
but Call of Duty was able to evolve because of Halo, at least from what I've noticed and
Sure.
from the research that I've done. So I'll always hold a special place in my heart. So it's like that's why it makes it kind of difficult to be subjective about Halo sometimes because of that. There's like fanboyism or whatever the case, but it holds a near and dear place to my heart. It's not
Right.
just it's a game. No, I mean I played with my pops as family. There's plenty of time that I've
You
spent
have
into
history
it.
with that game. Yeah.
Exactly. So but anyway, we can always getting that a little bit when we get to the current day. But the next thing with the Xbox that also kind of changed thing for me, and again, this is definitely outside the statute of limitation. But the other thing too that ended up happening is that the Xbox went away for a while, and I never knew why. And I
Hmm.
asked my dad, like, "Hey, what happened to the Xbox?" He was like, "Oh, I got somebody working on it right now. It's having some issues, whatever, blah blah blah." And then one day I get home from school and he's like, "Oh, hey, let's go to Blockbuster." I'm like, "Okay, for what?" They get some games. I'm all right, cool. I was like, "I thought we didn't have that. I thought we have the Xbox. I thought we didn't have that no more." And he was like, "Oh, don't worry about that. I just got it back today." And everything. I was like, "All right, well, okay, let's go get some games. It's been a while. Let's go." We come back with about 2 or 3 games. Hulk was one of them. Um, Another slept on game.
Hmm.
They need to completely remake it. But we brought these games home and I popped them in. And I was playing, I'm having a good time. With rentals, you got to take them back after a few days. I believe with games, it was like 2 or 3 days that you could keep them
Right.
out.
Right.
So we took the games back. And we come back to the house and just I go back to playing Halo or whatever I was playing at the time. And he was like, "Hey, let me see something real quick." I was like, "All right, well," I hand him the controller. He goes to the dashboard. He goes to the dashboard, and he enters this whole other different menu. I'm like, "All right, well, okay, what's going on here?" He then proceeds to boot up the Hulk game that we just took back. I'm like, "Okay, okay, what is going on? Okay, what is going on here? What is happening?" And that's when I ended up finding out about modding.
Nice.
He ended up he had a buddy of his at the time ended up putting a modded hard drive into the Xbox. So no matter what game that we got, we had the ability to download the game directly to the hard drive.
Yeah.
That now we could talk about the morality of that all we want or
That's
whichever the case may be,
that's cool. Don't worry about it.
but again at the time, especially for a family that didn't have too much of anything,
Sure.
I just thought that was the most. I thought that was the most like brilliant and amazing thing that I
Yeah.
had ever seen.
Hell
Especially
yeah.
with just instantly having access to that content.
Hmm.
It's like I got the early taste of what Game Pass was before Game Pass,
Right.
or other services, I should say. So
Yeah.
but that led me back into kind of the PC market and everything, but I was still more so heavily swayed on the console side of things. From that point on, when I from that Xbox, I made sure that I had I made sure I had an Xbox 360, and that kind of was sort of that departure from Sony for me. Although, again, it's really difficult for me to see it, to look at it that way, because I never looked at gaming separately like that. Oh, it's just these different brandings and these companies, they run these. Now, I never looked at it that way, and I never really paid attention to it until I stepped into the gaming community about a couple years ago at this point. And of course, you always hear over the years, oh, PlayStation's better, this console's better, this is better. Again, Sony does, well, you know how the adage goes, or whatever the case.
Oh yeah.
But needless to say, I never looked at anything that way, so it was always difficult for me to grasp like the fanboyism and why people always wanted to try to validate whatever console they were playing on. It was like, for me, oh, I should just enjoy playing games where you're at.
Yeah.
That was until online gaming really became a thing. Before I get too deep into the 360 and everything, online gaming with the original OG Xbox going into the 360 also was a major thing. Before Xbox Live, I was heavily into Xbox Connect, where you had to essentially hook your Xbox up to the computer or to a bridge into your computer so you can play with find a host and join that way and everything.
Yeah.
So I was heavily involved in that. So I had my early taste of that, and then that kind of just started my obsession with playing games online, especially with console, because it was just easy. You turn the console on, get connected. I might have to set the computer for a couple minutes, get connected to a lobby, and then boom, before I know it, it's 6 hours later. I've been playing with the same people for however long, glitching out the map, whatever the case may be. Especially got into Halo 2. So, but Halo 2 also, again, changed it a little bit for me perspective-wise. I got a little bit more competitive. I started going to tournaments on my own. But it also started to show, it kind of started to show my parents that I was really obsessed with this thing, right? And during that time, we're talking 2004, around that area somewhere. During that time, like until recently, really honestly, within the last decade, gaming was looked at, it's just some kid thing, it's some side thing, right? No matter how good you were at it, there was nothing else there. It's just, hey, you're playing this to have fun, that's it. And that caused bless my parents, and if they're going to do the best thing they felt was necessary at the time. But they did notice that I was getting really good at these games. But again, they also felt like I was just wasting my time with them. So, of course, school was never a problem for me and everything else. But needless to say, getting to the Xbox 360 generation, and then another game that kind of started making me look, also made me look at things differently, especially from like a third-person perspective, was Gears of War.
Oh, yeah, it's a good game.
Gears of War, the original trilogy, I mean, still to this, I think all 5 games are perfectly fine. 6 games if you want to include Judgment. I think all 6 games are perfectly fine. Of course, they all have their ups and downs, but the original trilogy, there's nothing like that. There was nothing like you booting in with Marcus, with Dom originally, watching Dom bust Marcus out, and then you just fighting the Locust. And that feeling of when you first rev that chainsaw up and you go right through that Locust. It caught something with me. And my dad also introduced me to that, but he also learned very quickly that he wasn't as good at those types of games that he may have once been. Right. So it got to a point to where, again, online gaming, I'm early on, I don't have my own account. Got to a point where I basically took over his Xbox Live account. Right. So now we go from playing the story mode on Gears of War to me. I mean, of course, before that, I was already kind of playing off and on his account, but this started the full on takeover. I was every day, night in, night out, playing multiplayer in Gears of War. Gears of War is the only game that made me look at Halo a little sideways, because going into Halo 3, it was right around the time I want to say Gears 2 came out, or Gears 2 was out. So I unfortunately didn't get as much time with it as I would have liked to,
Mm-hmm.
but I was still playing it off and on, but that kind of what started making me realize that I'm not the type of gamer that just plays any and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I play. I like to play games that I can get hundreds, if almost thousands, of hours out of.
Right.
And what the main proponent of that was the multiplayer side of it. Because from that point forward, and again, if I've been gaming online since about 2000 on PC, and then getting to the console space, and it's just ease of access, it made me honestly look at games as though if it didn't have a multiplayer proponent to it, I didn't want to play them. Like there was literally no point.
Right.
Because again, when you grow up not with a lot and you got to be picking, you got to be really choosy.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure that, hey, I know I can live in this space for quite some time before I get tired of it, and then I can move on. So for a long time through the 360 generation, going into the Xbox One, because I didn't get a PlayStation 3, had no interest in the PlayStation 3. There was nothing there. And again, me not being a brand loyalty dude or whatever the case, I was just playing whatever ecosystem made the most sense. And with all the moves that Microsoft and Xbox was making during that time, it just made the most sense for me to continuously invest in that ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
My games carried over when cloud saves started coming out. And then you can notice that you could go to different people's houses. Your cloud save would pop up, and you could just pick up pretty much where you left off at. Coming from memory cards or VMU or whatever the case, like it made you look at things extremely differently. So in turn, it made me look at games differently. So there's a lot of experiences that I have either missed out throughout the years because of that perspective, but it's nothing that I necessarily feel bad about, right?
Right.
There's a lot of big games that people talk about, like the original God of War trilogy. Of course, I played Devil May Cry. That's one of the top of the line for me. That was one of the few and far that I was able to get jumped into. Some others in there too, but it just made me feel completely different about how I should treat games and kind of my perspective on how I look at things now. Always more community driven, always more co-op based, or whichever the case. So
Right.
but yeah, I mean, going from the 360 generation, into the Xbox One, and then into now, a lot of what makes me the gamer that I am today is the wide variety of games that are out there. Now that I'm an adult, guy, they say there's a problem when a kid grows up and gets adult money.
Yep.
And but I mean, either here or there, but I don't know where I wanted to take it from there, but
Right.
whatever, whichever. But online gaming is definitely a main proponent to things that I consider even nowadays. I have opened up quite a bit more. Even Pong has recommended me, like, for example, Cyberpunk 2077 is one of those games that
Great game.
I originally wasn't. Oh, fantastic. I love that game.
Me too.
It was one of those games that I originally was going to sleep on because I was like, it's a single player game. It looks all right. It looks cool. It looks like something I may be interested in, but nothing else there. And then they had some other things, rumors. Oh, it could possibly have PvP. Oh, it's possibly going to do this. So I was like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, it sounds cool. Sounds interesting. And then that was around the time that me and Pong started kicking it, and he had suggested it to me. And I was like, I'll jump on the limb, and I can never regret that choice from that point forward. But before I don't want to get too deep into that because it's kind of current day. But from my early online days kind of to now, I want to say up to about a couple of years ago, I was, again, always heavily influenced by multiplayer. But the one thing that I never kind of stepped out into, because I just didn't think the space was there, was like jumping into the gaming community per se, like jumping into forums or having open conversation on whatever site that there might be, blogs and everything else. The other part of that too was me being mixed and a person of color. I didn't see that representation early on for me. And also when I had parents that were kind of making it seem like I was just wasting my time playing these games, I
Right.
never took it seriously. So it's like, for an
Right.
example, around Gears of War 2, I had a chance to go. I was given a chance to go MLG, and unfortunately, I had to turn it down because I was told that gaming was a waste of time. And come to find out, years later, couple years to a few years later, that first tournament that they had was $1 million tournament,
Wow.
and other people also were making some good money at that time because it was early on. MLG was blowing up, game battles was becoming really prevalent, and people were getting their name known, getting their name and recognition out there, and that is the kind of the one thing that I do kind of regret, because it's like, man, I really wish I would have chased that opportunity, because I was in prime shape for it. But all things understood, you can't anticipate everything.
Right.
It is what it is. Who knew that gaming would be something that would replace TV,
Crazy, isn't
TV
it?
time per se,
Mm-hmm.
or radio, whatever your vice is. So,
Yep.
but coming out, so neither here nor there. 360 generation was great. I didn't jump into PlayStation 3 because I just didn't see any reason to. There wasn't any games at the time that interested in me, and to be honest, Sony wasn't heavily invested into online gaming anyway.
Right.
And if that's where my head is at, of course, I'm not going to be thinking about those things. Even though they did have games like SOCOM, and they did end up adding the network port, an external device you could put on the PlayStation 2. You could say that they tried to fall in line with it. They just weren't. They weren't thinking that direction.
Right.
So PlayStation to me came kind of known as the single player box. Hey, if you play over there, if I met people, I knew exactly what I was going to get, and it did not fail. No matter who I talked to, as soon as I brought up PlayStation and they told me the first game and they told me whatever game they brought up, it was a single player game.
Yep.
So I was like, oh, okay, well, obviously I don't need to go that direction because there's nothing over there for me.
Right.
Until I saw my cousin play The Last of Us. And what got me on The Last of Us, which is honestly, it's still, when I think back on it today, like the fact that they got The Last of Us running on PlayStation 3 is crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
But what really did it for me is because he was playing multiplayer. I was like, hey, man, what is this? And he knew my obsession with Gears and the other third, Ghost Recon, and everything else, those types of shooters. It was like, man, this is Last of Us. It's a new game, just came out. I beat the story, and I'm playing some multiplayer now. I was like, oh man, and then when he made this Shiv on a Stick, it was called, and he took it when he went into his bag and he pieced it together, and he was like, hey, watch this. And he ran up on the first person he saw and just drove that board with that scissors, nail, whatever was attached to it, into this guy's head.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, this game's amazing!" and that immediately made me go out and be like, "All right, well, where can I get a PlayStation 3 at?" Right. And I got a Slim, and it kind of started me on that whole path. But it was the only game that I played on that PlayStation 3, and the only game I cared about.
Right.
And then that game also made me, again, me being a multiplayer gamer, because of that game, it also made me say, because I'll also say that story is still like top 5. Last of Us 1, that story is top 5 games of all time, hands down. Like, good. Especially as a dad now. Like, I wasn't a dad at the time. I mean, I was working my way there, but especially with having that connection now, there wasn't a better game with like moment to moment gameplay that really grasped you at every moment. Mm-hmm. I hadn't got that feeling since Gears 2.
Oh wow.
That feeling with when Dom first found his wife and everything, and she wasn't in the condition that he was expecting her to be in. Like, I hadn't experienced that until this point again. And I was like, man, this is fantastic. But I also told myself at that point that, hey, because of course they led it up to there's going to be another game that come out, that, hey, I'm not going to play the next one unless it has the multiplayer connected to it, because it was the main proponent that drew me in the first time.
Right.
So, needless to say, So coming off the PlayStation 3, that being the only game, Last of Us being the only real game that I played on that console, and then coming out of the 360, I guess I would be kind of, I gotta mention the Red Ring of Death. I fortunately didn't end up running into the Red Ring of Death until almost the end of the X360 generation.
Right.
I had to only get one replacement console, and that lasted me the last couple of years of the generation. But I didn't have any issues with mine from launch. I took mine completely apart. I spray painted my own Xbox 360, everything,
Nice.
the case on it and everything. It was completely customized, and I had that thing for a long time until I got the Red Ring of Death. And then I had a buddy who I thought was a smart guy telling me, "Hey, wrap it up in a towel, it'll work," and it did work. Until it didn't anymore.
Right.
You know, you
Heat
burnt
that
the
thing up
motherboard
too many times.
Yep. Burnt up the motherboard on it. But so fortunately, unfortunately, I mean, during that time, I was able to get a replacement, so it wasn't a huge deal. So I know the Red Ring of Death is always something that Microsoft is going to have to hold in their pocket and always be remembered on because it happened. But they fixed it.
It did happen.
You know, right. They did a lot of fixing towards it. They spent a lot of money to make sure they got it fixed. Man. And the biggest reason I bring that up though is because that's something else during that time that also made me realize Microsoft's level of customer service. Their level of customer service was like to the moon. Like you could get somebody on the phone. You call that 1-800 my Xbox or 1-800 Xbox number, whatever the case. You were going to get somebody on the phone.
Yep.
Which they're missing now, and that was such a key thing, and I think that did so much favor for them, not only because of the issues they were having with the 360, but also that some of the issues they were having with just the online space in general, which is why their ecosystem has become so refined today.
Oh yeah.
I think it's the biggest reason because they had a lot of customer input. A lot of people say, "Hey, I don't like this." Along with their own wants and needs and everything. Exactly, and that's one thing. Anybody, if you haven't seen the Power On documentary, check it out because it teaches you, it shows you a lot, and even that documentary itself, that also kind of skewed my perspective on how I look at gaming because we don't know what goes on behind the scenes. We don't know what happens, and a lot of these things do come down last moment or these last minute deals get cut, and they run into issues, and it's like that reality sets in. But then came the Xbox One generation, and again, I didn't really hear a lot of that hoorah about resolution and everything else, and then me also coming from the PC space, I never really gave it two minds. Again, I never judged somebody about what build they had or whether my build was better than yours. I never understood that perspective of people. Like you're measuring up to each other. It's like, hey, whip it out. Let me see how much bigger it is. I never.
Out, kid.
I'm just saying, like, I personally never got that. So it was always just about my friends that I was playing with, the other people that I would have conversation with, and none of that conversation ever led me to, maybe I should get a PlayStation 4. Xbox One it was. And the Xbox One for me was, again, it was just more Gears, more Halo, more, what other games there was some MMOs that dropped on there that I ended up playing. But mostly just online experience, a lot of Call of Duty. It's just mostly online experiences, some sports games thrown in there. I've never been too heavy on sports games overall.
Me either.
They lose their wonder after a certain point, and then me also. My favorite sport's football.
Same.
And Madden always aggravated me because I was like, no, this doesn't work in real life. Like, it's not. I'm not about to run this way, especially around Michael Vick era, 04 to 07.
Oh yeah.
And when people would run the opposite way and then still throw a perfect pass, like I was like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
But I was never a real heavy sports dude or whatever the case. But skip forward a little bit. So the Xbox One generation kind of leaded me into kind of where we are now.
Yeah.
And we got the One X, and what kind of led me jumping into the community, honestly.
Nice.
Again, for like I mentioned earlier, for a long time, I thought things were a certain way. When you saw the IGN, you saw the Game Informers, you saw PC Mag, or any of these other top quality publications, that you were excited to get those magazines because that's what you had to look for the new information. No matter how old that information might have been, that's what you had. And then not only that, when you saw it on TV representation, whether it was G4 or anything else like that, I just didn't see. I thought you had to have some kind of education in it. You had to have some kind of degree. You had to know somebody.
Right.
They had to walk you through the magical door and take you to Narnia, so you can be really invested into the gaming ecosystem. And I thought it was like that for a long time, even with YouTube and everything. Like I just wasn't thinking about that. But me and my friends and the buddies I have, we'll always have we should make videos. Like GTA was real big, so we were making GTA videos, GTA 5 videos, and we're like, hey man, we should really do this thing. And it never went anywhere. One, I didn't have the time during that time, and then two, it's just like I didn't see it. And then I got this wild bug one day, coming into at the end, right around the 1X, so it was that 2017, 2018. I got this bug in me that say, hey man, and I started listening to podcasts. Podcasts started kind of really making the scene and everything, kind of just basing it off of radio. I was familiar with that because my dad listened to a lot of radio. So I was like, it's podcasting. There's different people talking about podcasting, and it's not really. I like this podcast. They're talking about some interesting things, and they're not these people. They're not tied to these publications, and their content's like this. So it kind of made me look at things a little bit differently. And then I also started scouring Reddit and YouTube and Facebook, and having more open conversations with other people, and just kind of noticing that my friend group didn't really at the time. The people who I've been online gaming with for such a long time, they necessarily didn't have that same vision. And it wasn't until I stepped out of that to where, online game, hey, I get online, jump in a party, what we playing. Once I jumped out of that mind frame, things kind of opened up for me. It was like, there are these other things out here. These people are talking about this. So why are these people mad about these things going on? And why are these Xbox ponies and fanboys and like what is console war? Like, I mean, I've heard those terms before, but I never thought it was anything serious. Like,
right?
Thought it was like sports, or whatever the case. You have your favorite side, and you kind of move forward. Though I also kind of I say that, but at the same time, going into in the Xbox One generation, 360 to one generation, it did make me look at Sony kind of side eyed because they didn't have anything that for me personally.
Right.
So it's like, anytime that came up, I was like, there's nothing there. Nah, who cares? Who cares about Sony? That's a single player system. I don't play single player games like that, so who cares about that?
Right.
And so, I would downplay it and everything, and it wasn't nothing serious. But that kind of leads, and I feel like I'm all over the place, but
that's all right. That's all right. I'm gonna get ready to bottle Axe here in just a second. So.
There you go. But then that led into. So the Xbox One, the One X, me kind of getting my feelers out there for the community and everything, and then that's when I started tuning in. I want to say about 2020, coming into the series consoles getting ready to release and everything. I wanted to really get informed with what's the new news. What are people talking about? Why is this console going to be important for people? Why should I be excited about this PlayStation 5 that's coming out? I played Spider-Man. I thought it was a great game. I did get a PlayStation 4. I got a PlayStation 4 towards the end of the console generation for a game that nobody else could ever fathom. And it was a game that I actually got imported from Singapore because they only had the English subtitles there. But a game called Gundam Breaker 3.
Oh, cool.
And it's like a Musu fighter basically, but with Gundams, mechs and everything. So. So that's what made me get that console. So from that, I was able to experience Spider-Man, play that on release, loved that game, played on the hardest difficulty, loved every second of it. Best Spider-Man game that has ever been created. Insomniac are some wizards. And that mantle was passed over perfectly. One thing that they missed out on, and it's not available to everybody, unfortunately. But
Yes,
that's opening it up, and it's coming to PC, so whatever.
coming to PC. That's right.
Exactly.
Well,
And
still, let's turn the conversation just a little bit.
yeah,
I want to get
please.
into to a little bit more. No, you're good. This was good, man. This is the whole thing. It's a conversation. That's just the way people get to know you is when you talk. So
Yeah.
that's the thing. That's what we're here for. So the one thing I do want to turn it to now is I
Mhm.
guess how you got how you came up with your show Living
Mhm.
Split Screen. How
Okay.
I guess you and Pong kind of got together, and I mean we've heard a little bit from him on his
Right.
episode, but I want to hear from your perspective and how how things came together, and then and then now you put out this, and it's a really good show. It really is a
Thank you.
good solid
Appreciate
show.
that.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you got that going, and what's the direction you want to take that in the future? Because like I said, I know it's growing, and I know your fan base is growing, and you're like me. You want to get to that. You're looking for the subscriber base to get to 1,000, and it
Yeah,
will
of
get
course.
there. I know it will. I know it will
Of course.
because, like I said, man, you guys do a great job. But go ahead, man.
Appreciate that, man, for
Hmm.
sure. What started that whole journey again? Like I mentioned earlier, when the Series console started coming out and the PlayStation 5, I wanted to get in tune. I said, "Hey, F it, screw what all the thoughts I had about previously. Let's just do it."
Right.
What first started it was I was doing a podcast with a brother of mine, and it was like kind of like a entertainment and console
Hmm.
like podcast or gaming. It was an entertainment and gaming podcast. So we would talk about sports, we'd talk about movies, we'd talk about whatever, and talk about gaming.
Right.
Things got really complicated for me. My wife ended up having a stroke. That slowed
Goodness.
things down majorly for me,
Sure.
and so I had put that down. I was like, hey, I got to do all these things. I want to be home because where we were doing it, it was at an outside space, and it just didn't make sense at the time,
Right.
unfortunately. But from there, kind of put it down. We also one of the negative things though about us starting that situation is that we didn't establish anything. We
Right.
didn't jump in any communities. We weren't on Reddit. We weren't on YouTube. We weren't on Twitter. We were nowhere. So of course nobody's listening, right? Nobody knows who we are. Nobody's paying attention, and I'll definitely get into that here in a little bit because a lot of that does drive the type of numbers you see.
Yeah.
This is a job. This is additional work. And
Hmm.
until you get to a point to where it's kind of the machine is working for itself, you can only expect so much. But neither here or there. So with that, after we put that first podcast down. I just doubled down and jumping into the community. Made a brand new Twitter account because I hadn't used Twitter in Lord knows how long.
Right.
Last time, I mean, I've always been part of social media, but I've never been after MySpace. I never got and MySpace kind of died for me at around 2009, 2010, somewhere in that
Right.
area for me. So after that, I just didn't really. After I got out of high school, I just didn't really see the point of updating people on social media about my life. I felt
Hmm.
like it wasn't like if you wanted to know what was going on, come kick it, let's hang out.
Right.
I'm more of an in real life person. Let's
Sure.
actually. I'm partying. I'm having a good time.
Hmm.
I'm first year of college. Like I'm trying to have some fun. Like we're having fun out here and just enjoying ourselves. But either way, and so I just doubled down in the community and I started watching different shows. The first show that I really got introduced to was Mr. Boomstick.
Nice.
I enjoyed his content because you can tell that he was excited. He was genuine. He
Hmm.
was coming from his own perspective. And that is something that not only in the gaming space, but in a lot of other spaces that I've seen over the years where people are very sheepish.
Hmm.
And it's easy to fall in that mentality where, hey, because this is popular, this is what matters. It's like the whole
Right.
Jordan thing. I'm more of an Adidas fan, but people love Jordans, right?
Hmm.
That's why they sell year over year and get sold out and everything, no matter how they hold back stock. But with that, with me seeing how Boom was doing and everything, that really kind of opened me up to be like, okay, well, I can really do a gaming only podcast and it be a good time. Now, my previous co-host, maybe I wouldn't have been able to do that same show with him because he wasn't as involved. He played certain types of games. We had that, and again, we had that mentality where my mentality was obviously changing, and not only that, I had always been open about gaming, so it was just like I wanted to step out and getting in a conversation with chat. You see there's other people who are very like-minded like you, and then it kind of opened up more. I was like, all right, well, what else is there? I was all right, so type in gaming podcast, and RDX comes up, and I like dealing. I respect everything that he does.
Yeah.
I don't agree with everything that he says, and some of the points that he comes off with, but I do feel like he's a solid dude.
Right.
And I do like his energy. He's raw.
Oh, he's got energy.
He's unfiltered. You know what I'm saying? He's gonna speak his mind and say what it
Yep.
is, no matter how people feel. And that was something else that was. I was like, damn. It was like, ain't you can kind of be yourself. You don't have to like cater yourself to an audience or try to come across a certain way. So that kind of was like, all right, well, it makes sense. And then I got tuned into the Iron Lords. The Iron Lords for me was the closest thing that hit home because their friendship and the way they are with each other reminds me so much of my friend group and how we came up. So there was an immediate connection there, and from that point, it was kind of like, all right, well, I'm constantly tuned in. I'm at work. I was working at a warehouse at the time. So I got 8 hours of the day where I can listen to a few different podcasts constantly. Nice. So that was just the thing. And then when I could, I would just get in the chat and I would talk. And then one day, well, as time kind of progressed, I'm not going to say one day, but as time kind of progressed, the chats is basically how I met Pong. And me and Palm would go back and forth. He'd say something I'd like. I would say something he'd like, or whichever the case. We'd go back and forth with each other. We'd always see each other on different shows. So we'd always shout each other out. And so it just kind of built something there. And then one day, this had been like 6 months at this point. Me being in the community. I didn't reach out to him, but we were in another chat. I believe it was on Boom Show. It was on Boom Show, somebody else's show. We had said something else, and it was something else we agreed on. And just based off a previous conversation we had, I was like, just being funny. I was like, man, maybe we should start a show, man. It sounds like we have some good conversation here. And I never thought anything of it after that. And then, come to find out, one day I get a DM, and it's from Pong, and he was like, look, hey, I was thinking about doing a show, and this and the other thing, and he's like, I really like your energy and everything, man. I couldn't think of anybody else that I would want to do it with, and I wanted to reach out to see if I could do it, if you'd be down to do it. And it was an immediate like, let's do it. What's the ideas? And we started going through it and everything. And that's what started that fire. And then through more conversation, we found out that we had even more in common. Found out that we do like similar games, even though me and Pong are completely on different sides of the spectrum. Pong is older than I am, man. Like, Pong has literally been playing games since Pong. So where me, I've literally been playing games since Sonic. So, you know what I mean?
I know.
There's different perspectives there. Not only that, Pong's more of a single-player gamer, although he tries to downplay the multiplayer stuff, but he's pretty good at multiplayer games, too. So it's like we start playing games together, we start playing co-op games together, we're having conversation, and it became something that was just natural. Like, it wasn't something that we had to work towards, it wasn't, like, forced, none of that. And that there is no better feeling than knowing when you step into a situation or when you build a friendship that is just organic. It's natural. It's just, you're not working at it.
Right.
And from there, kind of built it up. We started rolling names and everything. And it took us at least a couple months. I want to say a couple, maybe 2 or 3 months for us to end up settling on the name that we ended up settling on. But we did end up choosing Living Split Screen. And the main premise of that was kind of playing off of the whole split screen nature, which is why when you tune into the show, where you see that where I have the gameplay kind of flipped over top and the bottom,
Yeah, I
it
like
gives
that.
gives that co-op kind of perspective. Like there's two different people playing,
Mm-hmm.
although it wears off quick once you notice it's the same gameplay, just flipped. But I feel like it works because I mean it's for the background. It's
It
a different
does,
way
yes.
different way of showing gameplay, and then not
Mm-hmm.
only that, it's my actual gameplay, so I feel like that helps with it too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we just kind of wanted to live off of. We kind of wanted to build it off some of the nostalgia with that co-op aspect. Split screen is what we came up with, and that's how we kind of wanted to pitch to the people. And the whole basis of our show was we didn't want to be console centric. Because the other thing that we found out talking to each other is that yes, I might favor Xbox, or Paul might have favored PlayStation at one point, or whichever the case may be. It's not just about that though.
Right.
Like the conversation is so much bigger for me than that. The conversation to me is how has gaming affected the industry? Like when you really look at it, gaming is the biggest form of entertainment to date.
Yes,
There's
it
nothing
is.
else bigger. Movies are now taking from gaming
Yeah,
versus the other way around. Where we're getting bad movies based off of games, where before we were getting bad games off of movies. So
Yep.
that's just an interesting perspective to look at. And then another thing that also kind of made me look at things a little bit differently, and shout out to Everborn Saga. But he said one day he was on Boom Show, he had said this, and he was like, gaming is art and should be treated as such. And instantly that flipped something else within me, because I was like, that's exactly how I feel. Exactly how I feel. Now he hasn't used the added sense, so I've been running with it. But that's exactly what it is. There's these people who spend years of their life dedicated to creating this piece of moving art for us as the consumer, and we are so quick to throw these experiences away. We are so quick to be like, oh, it's just a 10-hour experience. Oh, it doesn't have, without having any base of understanding of what it takes to actually make games, what it takes to be in the industry, to just so many people who don't understand. Devs don't stay in their career field for more than 5 years typically. And like I've brought up in the past, how would you like it if somebody came to you and said, hey, in the profession of your choice, you only have 5 years to work there in that profession. Either
Crazy.
because you got burnt out, or because of whatever else might have been going on.
Time for the next project.
We do know it's strenuous work, and there's
Yeah.
a lot that goes into it, which is why the whole crunch thing is such a big conversation now. But neither here or there. Those are the things that we wanted to speak on. What is the bigger picture? You heard Phil Spencer come out and say, "Hey, we want to reach 3 billion gamers." Well, what does that actually mean? Or like, are mobile gamers really are they irrelevant? Obviously not.
No.
Because that's the play. That's the other part of the reach that we got to get to. Hey, within the last 20 years, console gaming has been tapped out. It hasn't expanded. What, you get your 500 million consoles, 300 million consoles sold between, we'll say 500 million consoles sold between the three major companies, Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox, and if that, and then where's the other 2.5 billion gamers at?
Right.
On mobile phones.
Yep.
They're moving. They're on handheld devices, whatever the case may be. So what does that mean? Pong started coining that golden age of gaming, bringing that back, because it literally is. I started coining the age of accessibility, and we've kind of just built the show kind of based off of those principles, because we care about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we wanted to do also is demonstrate to people that you don't have to do it in the corny ways. Like, I don't have to be in everybody's DMs. I don't have to be begging for likes or clicks or whichever the case may be. I don't have to cater to a certain audience to get viewers. It's not about that. We wanted to build a natural ecosystem, because to me, I know a lot of people are like, they focus on the IGNs, Game Informers, all the big companies. To me, what I think would be more beneficial is if we found a way to come together as a community to really support each other.
Mm-hmm.
Because once we start doing that, none of those other companies would matter. Because
Right.
it's already happening to where it's hard to take those publications serious. You look at
True.
an article and be like, is this clickbait? Or is this a
Right.
genuine opinion? Or is this like journalism isn't what it used to be? There is
No,
no
it's not.
integrity in it anymore.
Very
Period.
true. Very
It's
true.
if you're not doing it for clicks, and I can't blame those people. I can't. It's hard for me to put them at fault. Is because they get paid for that. That's what drives their paychecks.
Right.
So it's like I can't be mad when an Kotaku puts out a clickbait article or this part play IGN says something completely off the ruckus about Xbox and they just said this thing like about PlayStation, and you see all these biases and everything.
Yeah.
We're already seeing that turn. So it's like me and Paul want to be able to build out a community of people that care for gaming for what it actually is, for the fun side of it, for the intellectual side of it, for the entertainment side of it. What does the bigger picture mean? Taking
Yeah.
that RTS view, even though I don't play RTS games anymore, I still use that adage of pulling yourself out of the world, looking at the darker crevices of the map, pulling those resources together, and just having a conversation about what's going on within the space. Do $70 games matter? Does inflation matter on these games?
Yeah.
Or does our digital games are going to take over everything? Is physical going away? Do these gamers matter? Do the casuals matter? Does the hardcore matter? What makes you this? What makes you that? And also trying to kind of eliminate all the biases and just pull a community together where we can have open conversation, not hate each other after it, not
Right.
jump down each other's throat because I like this game better than you like this game or whatever. Your opinion isn't valid to me. Like, I'm not going to jump down your throat about that. I appreciate you because you took the time out. It's like this conversation that we're having, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you even hit me up was like, yo, get you on the show. That's what it should be about.
Yeah.
Being able to grow our ecosystem, being able to grow our communities, man. And I think that's really the overall point of our show. And the future for us, I mean, I don't know if you've caught it. Me and Pong easily talk for over 3 hours. It was to the point to where we try to limit it in the beginning. We're going to do a 90-minute show. We're going to keep it concise, maybe 2 hours at most. And then it just got to a point to where because of how we structure the show, whether it's our upcoming games, because I want people to know what's upcoming, or
Right.
like this day in gaming segment where we give you 30 years of history of games that have come out on this day in gaming.
Yeah. It's awesome.
So you have that perspective and understand why you kind of come from to what we're doing now. It was so difficult to kind of hold our personal conversations back to the point to where, like, yeah, I mean, we do 3 to 4 hour shows, and it's like, I don't see how we would be able to. I mean, sure, we could refine it, but I also feel like there may be some things lost in that. And again, that could be
Right.
something that ends up we tailoring down wherever down in the future. But for me and Pong, I mean, honestly, we'd like to do this on a 3 to 5 day a week span. I mean, we can
Yeah.
again, if we can talk 3-4 hours a day, if not more, about specifically gaming. And that's the crazy thing.
Right.
People say, oh, there's nothing to talk about, or oh, it's news. It's like,
There's
yeah, if
always
you're
something
only,
to talk about.
if you're only basing it off of news, I can understand why you say that.
Yeah.
But there's so many other conversations to have that there's always going to be something there. And we want to be able to be on multiple platforms. I would love to be on an XM radio or something like that. Us doing
Sure.
our own show, being able to support each other, and really getting it out there to more and more people, man. Again, like Phil Spencer, our goal is to try to reach that 3 billion gamers also. We want to be able
Yeah.
to talk to everybody and, get them involved in the community. So.
Well, I think if you keep at it, man, I think you guys will get there. I really do. I think that you guys, it's a good product. It's a good format. You guys are good off each other. There's times when
Right.
you may go off on a subject, you may go off on a subject,
Right.
and then you guys will get each other back, back around to where and It's really good. It's really well done. And I'm not
Appreciate
just
it.
saying that because you're on the show. I'm saying it because it's true.
I appreciate
And I
that.
think, and if you're listening to this now, you definitely in the link below there'll be a link. Excuse me, in the notes below there'll be a link. Just click on it, and they'll be right to Living Split Screen, and subscribe to their channel. And not only that, but there's a little bell icon. Make sure you click that bell
Please, yeah.
icon so that you do not miss an episode. And I've seen episodes go a couple hours. I've seen an episode actually go 4+ hours before.
Yeah,
So I mean, it
yeah.
can happen. But the thing is, and I'm telling you from listening to myself, it's never boring. It's you guys take it to a good place. You get in there. There's something to talk about, or you wouldn't keep talking.
Right,
Well, I
exactly.
really enjoy it.
Yeah,
So
and
man,
that's also why, because we do longer shows, why we make sure to put the timestamps in there and everything. So if
yeah,
there's certain subjects you want to kind of tune into, boom, tune into that space, and then that's good, and decide whether that's what you're into or not. And if not, cool. And if so, hey, help, come help support. I mean, but that kind of does lead me into I don't know if this is kind of leading it somewhere else, but just to kind of stay on like the content creation side of things,
hmm
this is something else that I've learned, because you see all the time also that people are having a hard time growing,
right,
and there's a lot of content out here consumed by a lot of people, but also the community isn't just our space, our circle. Like, if there's 3 billion gamers out there, the 1,500 people that are on dealer show, that's not, you shouldn't consider that as competition. And I know some people like, oh, this person stepped on my toes, or this person, they get real upset when you either have a show around theirs, or they feel like you're taking away from them. And it's
right,
like, okay, do you not see what the bigger picture honestly is? Because I mean, for better or for worse, there is still friendly competition with us, right?
oh yeah,
With everybody who's doing this thing, right? You're in your time slot because it makes sense for that person. For you as the host, that's what makes sense. And
hmm
if somebody else has your show on top of you, it is what it is. But what
right,
can you do to expand that audience? Are you
right,
active on Reddit? Are you active on YouTube? Are you active on Facebook? These are like the things that you have to do. I'll be honest with this myself and say, no, I'm not. I wish I was. If I
right,
had a lot more time to do those things, good Lord knows where we could be at, having conversation and everything, because you
right.
have to build up a community. The only reason why we have the people watching now is because me and Pong took the time to build up and have those conversations with people
Yep,
and say, hey, this is our perspective. This is how we do things. But that's only on one platform.
yeah.
And all the reach isn't going to be from that one platform all the time. So,
Right, agreed. And I tell you, there's something else too that the nice thing about it, I mean, like as you said, your show drops Saturdays
yes,
at 9
9 a.m.
a.m.
Central.
Central, and but the thing is, the shows are there. So
Yeah.
like my show, I don't do it live. This is a recording, and I'll
Right.
drop it on a Monday. But that's because I know people will just when they get a chance, they'll tune and listen. And like I said, you go back in, you go do the timestamps, you make it to where it's accessible. So like
Yeah.
they don't I don't want people to feel like, especially for me and from your show either. That's like if you don't watch it live, you're missing it. If you
Yeah.
don't watch it live, you're not necessarily going to be getting interacting with it because you
Right.
can't, interact with the show. But if you watch it later, you're still going to get a huge benefit from their show. So
Right.
don't hesitate to download and watch it. And there's some older shows. You go back to some of the subjects that they talk about, and that you'll get some really good stuff out of it. So definitely check it out. So man, Steele, it's been an honor. It's been great having you on today, man. I really appreciate it. If you don't mind, it's just two questions I want to ask you real
Okay.
quick, and these are quick questions, and then we're gonna then I'm gonna have you tell everybody how they can reach you and how they can get a hold of you.
All
But
right.
my question I kind of like to ask everybody is um what game, well, it's probably just we'll just bottle it to the one. What game coming out that is, I guess, been announced? Because sometimes people I talk to insiders type thing.
Right.
But if it's something that's publicly announced, what game are you most looking forward to that's not out yet that's coming up?
This year or
It could
just
be next year,
overall?
overall, doesn't matter. And it can be more than one because almost everybody's giving me more than one. That's fine.
No, I mean I can stick with the one right now.
Cool.
I try not to go too far out when I think about games. So I'm gonna just keep it within the year. For me, currently, the game that I'm most excited about is going to be Gotham Knights.
There you go. That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah. That's like I said, there was some teases at first. People were like,
Right,
it doesn't look great, but that wasn't the final finished polished game. And I
right.
think I think when it finally comes out, I think it's going to surprise a lot of people how good it's really going to look.
Co-op Arkham game, man. Like I don't know.
Hmm.
Again, and I've been working my way back through the Arkham games and everything because I had only played Arkham Knight, and that was a fantastic game.
Hmm.
But I didn't play any of the other ones, so I played through those Asylum and then City, and man, they're on a roll. I want to see what because the same people who made Arkham Origins are who are making Gotham Knights.
Hmm.
So I still want to jump into Origins to kind of get that perspective. Had you had a chance? Did you jump into Arkham Origins at all? Or
I did not. No.
okay.
No.
So I wanted to kind of get the perspective. And I can't think of the name of the dev that makes that game right now. But God, but but yeah,
That's all right.
Gotham Knights.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, with Steel, if you don't mind, tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter. Plus, it'll be in the notes below. But go ahead and tell people where they can find you.
For sure. Hey, Dave, again, I greatly appreciate you for just inviting me on. You doing this, man. Again, this is something that I've also been considering, just interviewing people. There's something about that
Heck yeah.
one-on-one experience that you just don't get anywhere else. You know, when you're on a panel with people, you get so many different perspectives. You don't ever get everything out, but these experiences are always amazing. I'm always like blessed and humbled to be asked to do these types of things. And again, you're amazing at the interview process, man. So I
Thank you.
appreciate that, man, for sure. It's definitely I'm gotta definitely keep out a lookout for it for sure. But for me, you can find me Steel Rain I. Steel Rain I. The T is a 7. Anywhere that has a search bar, honestly. There's a reason I refined my name down. I wanted to make it as easy as possible. So no
Yeah.
matter where you're at, whether it's Google, Xbox, PC, PlayStation, whatever it is, type that in and you will find me. Steel Rain I. The T is a 7. Other than that, I'm most frequently on Twitter. Hit me in the DMs. Let's have those conversations. Let's talk gaming. Or if you want to group up, let me know. I'm not one of those people who are going to ignore you. I'll tell you, hey, if I'm
You
busy
applied to
gaming,
me.
I'm busy gaming.
There you go. There you go.
So
Steel, again, thank you so much. In the description below, we'll have the links to your YouTube channel,
appreciate that.
your Twitter channel. Also, I'll have that your gamer tag spelled out exactly like it is
Perfect.
because it's unique. That way, it's because sometimes I'm searching like what is it because you can't get exactly what you want sometimes. But yeah, this way everybody will be able to find it. Again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you everybody for joining us today on Outbreak Gamers.
Game over.